This is the strange and unsettling story of Evan Mercer, a man who disappeared in Glacier National Park, and what happened when he was finally found. They called it one of the most baffling disappearances ever recorded in the park's history. Evan was a quiet, 42-year-old wilderness photographer who one day simply vanished. He left behind no footprints, no scraps of clothing, not a single broken branch. Even the search dogs, with their incredible sense of smell, couldn't find the faintest trail to follow. Rangers and search teams did everything they could. They scoured the vast, rugged landscape, assuming he had fallen into a deep ravine or perhaps drowned in one of the park's notoriously freezing rivers. But they found nothing. As weeks turned into months, and months stretched into 3 long years, Evan Mercer's case went cold. It became just another unsolved mystery, another story of a person swallowed whole by the unforgiving mountains. But the mountains hadn't swallowed him. They had kept him. It was a late October afternoon, 3 years after Evan's disappearance, when 2 hikers were making their way through a remote part of the park. The air was crisp and still. Suddenly, they smelled smoker-thin, sharp scent, like burning pine needles carried on a faint breeze. This was unusual. The forest around them was silent, eerily so. Normally, you'd hear the distant cracking of shifting ice or the call of a bird, but today there was nothing but a heavy quiet. Curiosity piqued, they decided to follow the smell. It led them off the main trail, deeper into the dense woods, until they stepped into a small, secluded clearing that felt untouched by time. And that's where they saw him. A small campfire was burning low, its flames steady and controlled impossibly so for an unattended fire. Beside it, sitting perfectly upright on a fallen log, was a man. He looked as if he had been carved from wax and frost. His clothes were stiff, his skin was pale like old parchment, and his wide-open eyes stared blankly across the clearing, as if he were still watching something in the trees. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. At first, the hikers thought he was just another trekker, resting by a fire. One of them called out a friendly hello. The man didn't answer. They called out again, a little louder this time. Still no response. A cold dread began to creep in. As they got closer, they realized the horrifying truth. The man was not resting. He was gone. They immediately contacted the park rangers. What came next is the part of the story that investigators refuse to speak about in public interviews, the part that gave seasoned forensic experts nightmares. The body was identified as Evan Mercer, but his body had been perfectly preserved. He hadn't been touched by animals. His body showed almost no signs of decay. The freezing mountain air had naturally mummified him, which can happen, but this was different. This wasn't the most terrifying part of the discovery. The medical examiner's report revealed something that defied all logic. Evan Mercer had not died 3 years ago when he first went missing. According to the autopsy, his time of death was approximately 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. He had been missing for 3 years, yet he had died less than a month before being found. How was that possible? His clothes were the exact same ones he was wearing on the day he vanished, the same brand, the same wear marks, even the same small tear on the right sleeve. There were no newer fibers, no newer dirt, no indication that he had been living somewhere else and returned. The contents of his stomach were just as bizarre, only pine needles and melted snow. His fingernails showed minimal growth, consistent with someone who had been alive until recently. But it was his face that truly froze the blood of everyone who saw him. His expression was one of pure, unadulterated terror, as if the very last thing he saw was something so unspeakable it had literally scared him to death. Rangers immediately launched a full-scale investigation of the campsite. Just 20 feet from the log where Evan sat, they found a second fire ring. This one was older, colder, filled with ash. It was as if someone else had been camping there, just outside the ring of Evan's firelight, watching him. For years, inside Evan's old, weathered backpack, they found his camera, miraculously. The memory card was still intact and functional. The photos started out normal, stunning. Landscapes of mountains, streams, and wildlife, the work of a talented photographer. But then, the images took a dark turn. The last photo series was taken at night, just 3 weeks before his body was discovered, around the time the medical examiner determined he had died. The first of these final photos showed a blurry figure standing in the woods, right at the edge of his firelight. It was tall, lean, and unnaturally still. Its face wasn't visible, just a dark, humanoid shape against the blackness of the trees. The next photos were taken just seconds apart, and in every single one, the figure was closer. Sometimes it had moved only a few inches, a terrifyingly slow advance. In other shots, its shape seemed to shift and distort, as if the darkness itself was taking a step forward. The final photo on the memory card was completely black. At first, investigators thought it was just a misfire, a shot of nothing. But when forensic technicians brightened the image digitally, they saw something that made one of them refuse to look at it a second time. It was Evan's own face, reflected in the lens. His features were twisted in a mask of horror, and reflected in his wide eyes was something behind him, something the camera never captured directly. Something leaning over his shoulder. The official report concluded that Evan Mercer got lost, survived for an unknown period, and eventually succumbed to exposure, case closed, but off the record. Investigators and rangers told a different story. They found footprints near the camp. They were large, human-like, but definitely not human. The impressions were deep, suggesting they belonged to something that weighed far more than any man. The tracks led away from the campsite, deep into the forest. But there were no tracks leading back out. A month after the discovery, one of the lead rangers on the investigation abruptly resigned. His resignation letter was short and cryptic, containing only 2 sentences. He wasn't alone in those 3 years. Something was waiting with him. And to this day, some hikers in that remote part of Glacier National Park report strange occurrences. They say that on silent, windless nights, you can sometimes smell a campfire burning deep among the pines, in a place where no fires should be. A few have even sworn they've seen a lone figure sitting beside it, frozen in place, staring at something across the clearing that they cannot see. A man waiting to be found again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more unsettling tales from the world's most mysterious places.